The Galactic Council had kept peace for 3,000 years. They did this by drawing lines on star maps and telling everyone to stay on their side. It worked well enough. Wars became rare. Trade flowed between 100 different species. Life was good for most beings in the galaxy, but there was one line that no one crossed. One boundary that every species respected. It surrounded a small yellow star and the blue planet that orbited it. Earth, home of the humans. The Deathworlders. The Council had studied Earth for centuries before the humans developed space travel. What they found terrified them. Earth was a Class 7 death world, the most dangerous classification possible. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere contained a gas called oxygen that was poison to most life forms. The planet had massive storms, earthquakes, floods, and fires. Predators hunted in every environment. Diseases mutated constantly. The temperature swings alone would kill most species, and somehow, humans thrived there. They evolved to survive everything their world threw at them. Their bones were dense as stone. Their muscles were powerful beyond reason. They could heal from wounds that would kill any other species. They ate plants and animals that were toxic to everyone else. They even seemed to enjoy danger, seeking out thrills and challenges for fun. When humans finally reached the stars, the Council made a quick decision. They drew a quarantine zone around Earth and its colonies. No one in, no one out. The humans were too dangerous to risk contact with. They were monsters who came from a monster world. For 200 years, the quarantine held. Humans stayed in their space. The galaxy stayed in theirs. Everyone was happy with this arrangement. Then the Valari research ship Gentle Dawn suffered a catastrophic engine failure. Captain Tella was a scientist, not a soldier. She had spent her life studying distant stars and writing papers that few people read. Her crew of 42 were the same. Peaceful researchers, academics. They had never fired a weapon or faced real danger. Now they drifted toward a black hole. The engine explosion had killed 3 crew members instantly. Another 7 were badly injured. The remaining systems were failing one by one. They had maybe 6 hours before the black hole's gravity pulled them past the point of no return. Tella sent a distress call on every frequency. She begged for help. She described their position, their situation, their dwindling time. She called out to anyone who might hear. The Council received her message. They calculated the distances. No Council fleet could reach the Gentle Dawn in time. The rescue ships were too far away. It would take at least 12 hours to arrive, and the Valari only had 6. The Council sent their regrets. They would honor the crew's memory. Nothing more could be done. But the distress call did not stop at the Council's borders. Radio waves do not respect lines on maps. The signal bled outward. Crossing the invisible boundary that no one was supposed to cross, it reached human space. On the orbital station Sejong, Communications Officer Yuna was running a routine scan when she picked up the transmission. She listened to the desperate voice of Captain Tella. She heard the fear, the pleading, the fading hope. She understood every word because humans had spent 2 centuries quietly learning every language in the galaxy. Even if no one would talk to them, Yuna did not hesitate. She sent the message directly to Fleet Admiral Dowan. The Admiral was an old man now. He had gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for a day that many thought would never come. A day when humanity might finally prove itself to the galaxy. He had trained his crews, built his ships, and waited. When he heard the distress call, something old and powerful stirred in his chest. It was a feeling that humans had carried since they first walked the savannas of Africa. A need to help. A refusal to let others suffer when something could be done. His advisors warned him. Crossing the quarantine zone was an act of war. The Council would respond with force. Humanity could face destruction. Was 42 alien lives worth risking billions of human ones? Do-han thought of his grandmother. She had survived a great war when she was young. She had seen the worst of humanity and the best. Before she died, she told him one thing that he never forgot. "We are human," she said. "We help. That is what makes us human." Do-han gave the order. Within 1 hour, the first response fleet mobilized. 12 ships with 3,000 crew members. Engineers, doctors, soldiers, and pilots. They checked their equipment and said goodbye to their families. They knew what they were risking. The fleet gathered at the boundary. Beyond this line, no human had officially traveled in 200 years. Beyond this line was a galaxy that feared and hated them. Beyond this line was the unknown. Admiral Do-han stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Cheongmagung. He looked at his crew, young faces and old ones, all of them ready, all of them willing. "Someone called for help," he said simply. "We answer. That is who we are." The fleet crossed the boundary. The galaxy was about to learn what Deathworlders could do. Not as conquerors, not as monsters, but as something far more terrifying to those who had built empires on fear and isolation. As helpers, the humans were coming. The Valari crew saw the ships appear on their broken sensors and felt their hearts stop. 12 vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel like predators emerging from darkness. The ships were massive. They were built with thick armor and heavy engines. They looked like weapons given form. Captain Tella recognized the design from old Council warning files. Human ships. Deathworlder vessels. The monsters had come. She ordered her crew to hide. The scientists squeezed into storage compartments and maintenance tunnels. They turned off their lights and held their breath. Some of them prayed to gods they had not believed in since childhood. Others simply closed their eyes and waited for death. Tella stayed on the bridge. She was the captain. If the Deathworlders wanted someone to kill first, it would be her. She would buy her crew whatever time she could. The communication system crackled. A voice came through. It spoke in perfect Galactic Common, the trade language of the Council. The voice belonged to a female human. "Valari vessel Gentle Dawn. This is Lieutenant Unji of the Terran First Response Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Please do not be afraid." Tella did not believe it. This had to be a trick. Deathworlders did not help. They hunted. They killed. Every child in the galaxy knew this, but the human voice continued with calm patience. Lieutenant Unji explained their plan. They would send engineers to repair the ship. They would send doctors to treat the wounded. They would tow the Gentle Dawn away from the black hole. All they needed was permission to board. Tella laughed bitterly. What choice did she have? Die from the black hole or die from the humans? At least with the humans, death might be quick. "You may board," she said, her voice shaking. The first human shuttle attached to the Gentle Dawn 20 minutes later. When the airlock opened, Captain Tella saw her first Deathworlder in person. He was huge. Engineer Taiwu stood nearly twice her height. His environmental suit made him look even larger. His hands were massive, big enough to crush her skull without effort. When he moved, she could see the power in his body, the strength that came from evolving on a world of crushing gravity. But his voice was soft, gentle, even. "Captain," he said, bowing his head slightly. "My team is here to help. Please show us your engine room." The humans moved through the ship like ghosts. They were fast and efficient. They barely spoke to each other, communicating through hand signals and short words. They knew exactly what to do. Within an hour, Taiwu and his team had stopped the worst of the damage. Within 2 hours, they had basic systems running again. The Valari crew slowly came out of hiding. They watched these giants work with a mix of terror and amazement. The humans handled their delicate equipment with surprising care. They asked permission before touching anything. They explained what they were doing and why. Chief Medical Officer Suman arrived with the second shuttle. She was a small human by their standards, but still towered over the Valari. She found the injured crew members and began treating them immediately. A young Valari scientist named Pril watched Suman work. The human doctor used strange tools and medicines, but her hands were incredibly gentle. She spoke softly to her patients, telling them they would be okay. When one of the injured Valari began to cry from pain, Suman held her hand and hummed a quiet song until the medicine took effect. Pril pulled out her recording device. She began documenting everything. The galaxy needed to see this. The monsters were not acting like monsters. The towing operation began 4 hours after the humans arrived. Their ships attached cables to the Gentle Dawn and slowly pulled it away from the black hole. It was dangerous work. The gravity was strong. One mistake could destroy everything. Admiral Dohan commanded the operation from his flagship. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He watched every sensor reading and made constant adjustments. When one of his ships reported stress on their hull, he ordered them to pull back immediately. No human life would be risked needlessly. No Valari life either. 6 hours after they crossed the quarantine boundary, the rescue was complete. The Gentle Dawn was safe. All surviving crew members were stable. The ship could limp to the nearest port for proper repairs. Captain Tella requested a direct communication with the human admiral. When Dewan's face appeared on her screen, she struggled to find words. Why? She finally asked, "Why did you come? We are not your people. We are not even your friends. Our council has kept your species caged for 200 years. Why would you risk everything to save us?" Admiral Doan was quiet for a long moment. His tired eyes looked at her with something she did not expect. Warmth, understanding, compassion. "Because you called for help," he said simply. "That is reason enough. That will always be reason enough." Tella wept then. Not from fear. Not anymore. She wept because she had spent her whole life believing a lie. She had been taught that Deathworlders were monsters. Instead, she found heroes. When the human fleet escorted the Gentle Dawn to safe space, Pril uploaded her recordings to every network she could access. The galaxy watched humans carry injured Valari. They watched humans share their food and water with strangers. They watched monsters act like angels. The quarantine had been broken. The council would be furious. War might follow, but something else had broken too. A wall of fear and hatred that had stood for 200 years began to crack. The humans had come to help, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The video spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Pril's recording showed everything. Humans working to save lives. Humans treating the wounded with gentle hands. Humans refusing to leave until everyone was safe. Billions of beings watched the footage and felt their understanding of the universe shift. For 200 years, they had been told that Deathworlders were monsters. Now they saw something different. The Galactic Council was not happy about this. High Counselor Veth called an emergency session. He was an old creature from a species that valued order above all things. Rules existed for reasons. Boundaries must be respected. The humans had crossed the quarantine zone. They had broken the most important law in the galaxy. They must be punished. "We cannot allow this to stand," Veth declared to the assembled council. Today they cross the boundary to save a ship. Tomorrow they cross it with war fleets. The Deathworlders must be contained. They must be reminded of their place. Many council members nodded in agreement. They were afraid. The video showed humans being kind, yes, but they also showed human strength. Those massive bodies. Those powerful ships. If the Deathworlders ever decided to conquer instead of help, who could stop them? Fear made the council members agree to sanctions, trade restrictions, military buildup along the quarantine zone, a formal condemnation of human actions. Some even spoke of a preemptive strike, destroying Earth before the monsters could strike first. Ambassador Jisoo of Earth requested permission to address the council. She wanted to explain. She wanted to talk about peace and cooperation. She wanted to show them that humanity meant no harm. The council denied her request. They did not want to hear from Deathworlders. They wanted to contain them. Jisoo was a patient woman. She had spent her career learning to work within systems, to follow rules, to play political games. But she also knew when the rules were wrong. She knew when following the system meant failing her people. She made a different choice. Using human technology, Jisoo broadcast directly to every public network in the galaxy. She bypassed the council entirely. Her face appeared on screens in homes, schools, and workplaces across 1,000 worlds. Billions of beings saw a human speak to them for the first time. She did not look like a monster. She was small for a human, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She wore simple clothes. She spoke slowly so everyone could understand. "My name is Jisoo," she began. "I am the ambassador of Earth. I know you have been taught to fear us. I know the stories you tell your children about Deathworlders. I want to show you the truth." She showed them images of Earth. Yes, there were dangerous animals and violent storms. But there were also forests of incredible beauty, oceans that sparkled in the sunlight, mountains that touched the clouds. Earth was dangerous, but it was also wonderful. She showed them human history. Wars and conflicts, yes. She did not hide the darkness. But she also showed them art and music. She showed them parents holding children. She showed them strangers helping strangers after disasters. She showed them humans giving their lives to save others. "We come from a hard world," Jisoo said. "We survived not by becoming monsters, but by learning to work together. Every human child is taught that we must help each other. That is how we live through everything our planet threw at us. That is who we are." She showed the rescue footage one more time. Admiral Dowan's words echoed across the galaxy. "Because you called for help. That is reason enough." "We broke your quarantine," Jisoo admitted. "We broke your law. But we could not ignore a cry for help. We will never ignore a cry for help. That is not who we are. We would rather die than become the monsters you believe us to be." She ended with a simple request. "Give us a chance. Let us prove that we can be your friends. We have so much to offer. Medicine, technology, protection. All we ask is the opportunity to share it." The broadcast ended. The reaction was immediate and powerful. Ordinary citizens across the galaxy began questioning the council. Why had they hidden the truth about humans? Why had they refused to even talk to them? The rescue proved that Deathworlders could be kind. Maybe everything else the council said about them was wrong too. Protests began on 12 worlds. Politicians who supported the quarantine found themselves facing angry voters. The council's authority, built over 3,000 years, began to crack. High Councilor Veth tried to regain control. He called Jisoo's broadcast propaganda. He warned that humans were manipulating everyone. He demanded loyalty to the council. But doubt had been planted. Fear was being replaced by curiosity. Hatred was being replaced by hope. Then a new distress signal arrived. A colony on the frontier was under attack. Raiders were burning homes and killing civilians. The colony had been calling for help for hours, but the nearest council fleet was 12 hours away. Too far. Too late. The human fleet was only 3 hours away. Admiral Dowan received the message. He did not ask for permission from the council. He did not wait for political approval. He gathered his ships and set course for the colony. "Someone is calling for help," he told his crew. "We answer." The humans were coming again. This time, they would not just save lives. They would show the galaxy what Deathworlders could really do. The Sketh Raiders had terrorized the frontier for decades. They attacked colonies that could not defend themselves. They stole resources, took prisoners, and killed anyone who resisted. The Council had tried to stop them many times, but the Sketh were fast and clever. They always escaped before the slow Council fleets could arrive. Colony Prosperity 7 was their latest target. It was a farming world with 10,000 civilians, families, children, workers, who had come to build new lives far from the crowded core worlds. They had no military. They had no weapons. They had only a small security force with basic equipment. When the Sketh ships appeared in orbit, the colonists knew they were going to die. The raiders landed in waves. Hundreds of warriors with advanced weapons and cruel hearts. They began burning buildings and rounding up prisoners. The security force fought back, but they were outnumbered 10-1. They fell quickly. Governor Mina sent a desperate distress call to the Council. "Help us, please. Anyone." The Council responded with the same answer they had given. "Captain Tella." The fleet was too far away. They were sorry. Nothing could be done. But the humans heard the call too. Admiral Dowan pushed his ships to their limit. 3 hours became 2. 2 became 90 minutes. His engineers worked miracles, coaxing extra speed from engines that were already at maximum. The crew did not complain. They knew what was at stake. Commander Hyunwoo prepared the assault plan. He was a serious man who rarely smiled. He had trained his entire life for combat, but he had never actually fought anyone. Humanity had been isolated for 200 years. There was no one to fight. That was about to change. The Terran Third Fleet dropped out of faster than light, traveled directly above Prosperity 7. The Sketh Raiders saw the human ships appear and felt the first flicker of doubt. These were not Council vessels. These ships were built for a Deathworld species. Heavy armor, massive engines, weapons that looked terrifying even when silent. The Sketh commander ordered his ships to attack anyway. His warriors had never lost a battle. They would not start now. The battle in orbit lasted 12 minutes. Human ships absorbed. The Sketh weapons fire like it was nothing. Their armor, designed to survive the hazards of Earth and space, shrugged off attacks that would have crippled Council vessels. When the humans fired back, their weapons cut through Sketh shields like paper. 3 Sketh ships were disabled in the first minute. 4 more in the next 5. The remaining raiders tried to flee, but human ships were faster. Within 12 minutes, the entire Sketh fleet was captured or destroyed, but the battle on the ground was just beginning. Captain Mira led the marine drop. 30 humans in full combat gear fell from orbit in drop pods. They hit the ground like meteors, landing in the middle of the raider force. The colonists watching from hiding places saw these giants emerge from craters and felt a different kind of fear. These were not the gentle rescuers who had saved the gentle Dawn. These were warriors. Mira gave a simple order: protect the civilians. Stop the raiders. Minimum casualties if possible. The humans spread out through the colony. The Sketh turned their weapons on these new enemies and fired. It barely slowed them down. Human bodies were built to survive a death world. Their bones were dense. Their muscles were powerful. Their skin was thick. Wounds that would kill any other species were minor injuries to them. One human soldier took 3 direct hits to the chest and kept fighting. Another lost an arm and continued shooting with her remaining hand until a medic could reach her. But it was not just their toughness that broke the Sketh. It was their skill. Humans had spent 200 years in isolation with nothing to do but train and prepare. They had studied every combat technique in the galaxy. They had developed new ones of their own. They moved like predators, working together with perfect coordination. Young Ji-hoon was not a fighter. He was a medic barely 20 years old. His job was to save lives, not take them. But when he saw a group of colonists cornered by raiders, he did not hesitate. He charged into the fight with nothing but a medical kit and a sidearm. He took down 2 Scath before the other Marines arrived to help. The battle on the ground lasted 40 minutes. The humans did not kill any raiders if they could avoid it. They used stun weapons when possible. They captured instead of executed. Admiral Do-won had been very clear. They were here to protect, not to slaughter. They would not become the monsters everyone expected. When it was over, not a single colonist had died after the humans arrived. The raiders were in custody. The fires were being put out. Medical teams were treating the wounded. Governor Mina approached Captain Mira with tears streaming down her face. She was a small woman from a species that barely reached human waist height. She looked up at the armored giant who had saved her people. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Mira removed her helmet. She was young too, with short hair and tired eyes. Blood from a wound on her forehead dripped down her face, but she smiled. "You called for help," she said. "We came." Ji-hoon spent the next 3 days treating injured colonists. He did not sleep. When the other medics tried to make him rest, he refused. There were too many people who needed care. A young colonist child followed him everywhere, holding his hand whenever he was not working. The child asked him why he was helping. Why did the scary Deathworlders save them? Ji-hoon knelt down to look at the child. His eyes were red from exhaustion. His hands were stained with the blood of people he had healed. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "That is all that matters." The galaxy watched everything. They saw humans fight like demons and heal like angels. They saw Deathworlders risk their lives for strangers. They saw monsters become heroes. Planets began sending messages to Earth, not threats, not demands, requests. "Please help us. Please protect us. Please be our friends." The Council's authority crumbled a little more with each message. The galaxy was changing, and the humans were at the center of it all. 1 year passed since the rescue of the Gentle Dawn. 1 year since humans crossed the quarantine boundary. 1 year since everything changed. The Galactic Council met for the last time in its current form. High Counselor Veth had resigned in disgrace. The member species no longer trusted the old leadership. They wanted change. They wanted a future that included humanity. The integration. Treaty was signed on a space station, built specifically for this moment. Ambassador Jisoo stood among representatives from 47 species. She held a pen that felt heavier than anything she had ever carried. With one signature, 200 years of isolation would end. "On behalf of Earth and all human colonies," she said, her voice steady, "I sign this treaty. We promise to be good neighbors. We promise to help when we are needed. We promise to never become the monsters you feared." She signed her name. The galaxy erupted in celebration. Admiral Do-won watched the ceremony from his flagship. He was tired. A year of constant missions had worn him down. His hair was whiter now. His body ached from old injuries. But his heart was full. His final order as Fleet Admiral established the Galactic Emergency Response Corps. It would be a joint fleet crewed by humans and aliens working together. Ships from Earth would fly alongside ships from a dozen other worlds. When a distress call came, they would answer together. The old admiral recorded a message for the Corps. "I have spent my life waiting for this moment," he said. "We humans always believed we had something to offer the galaxy. Not conquest, not domination. Something better. Partnership. friendship, help. Now we have the chance to prove it. Do not waste this opportunity. When someone calls for help, you answer. That is who we are. That is who we will always be. He retired to a small house on Earth. He grew vegetables in a garden and watched the stars at night. He died peacefully 3 years later, surrounded by family and friends from a dozen different species. Captain Tella became the first Valari to serve on a human ship. She joined the crew of the Chunggung as a science officer. At first, her new crewmates made her nervous. They were so big, so strong. But they welcomed her like family. They learned to cook Valari food. They celebrated Valari holidays. They treated her as one of their own. Tella and engineer Taiwu became close friends. He taught her human card games. She taught him Valari poetry. They spent long nights talking about their different worlds and how similar they actually were. Young Pearl became famous across the galaxy. Her recordings of the rescue had changed everything. Now she led a research team studying human and alien cooperation. Her papers were read by billions. She argued that the galaxy was stronger together. That fear had kept them apart for too long. She fell in love with a human researcher named Dong Yun. Their relationship was controversial at first. Some said it was wrong for different species to be so close. But love does not care about such things. They got married in a ceremony that blended human and Valari traditions. It was broadcast across the galaxy. Commander Hyunwoo trained the first integrated combat units. Humans fought alongside aliens, teaching each other their unique strengths. The humans brought power and endurance. The aliens brought speed and flexibility. Together, they were unstoppable. The Sketh Raiders tried to return once. A massive fleet attacked a border colony. The integrated units responded within hours. Humans and aliens fought side by side, covering each other, protecting each other. The raiders were crushed completely. They never returned. Hyunwoo never learned to smile much, but he did learn to respect his alien comrades. He said they were the bravest soldiers he had ever commanded. Medic Ji-hoon opened the first cross-species medical academy. Doctors from every world came to learn from him. He taught them that healing was the same everywhere. Pain was pain. Fear was fear. Compassion was the only medicine that worked on everyone. The young colonist child, who had followed him during the battle, grew up to become a doctor too. She said Ji-hoon inspired her. She wanted to help people the way he had helped her family. Lieutenant Yoonji became ambassador. Yoonji. She represented humanity to the new Galactic Alliance that replaced the old council. Her first speech echoed the words she had spoken to Captain Tella so long ago. "We are here to help," she said. "Please do not be afraid." She worked tirelessly for cooperation between species. She negotiated trade agreements, resolved disputes, and built bridges between cultures that had never spoken before. When she retired, statues were erected in her honor on 15 different worlds. The galaxy changed in ways no one could have predicted. Human medicine cured diseases that had plagued other species for millennia. Human engineering built stations and ships that opened new frontiers. Human art and music spread across the stars, touching hearts that had never known such beauty. But the humans also learned from their new friends. Alien philosophy helped them find peace. Alien science solved problems they had struggled with for centuries. Alien culture enriched their own in countless ways. Together, they were better than either could have been alone. Years passed. Generations changed. The old fears faded into history. Children grew up in a galaxy where humans were not monsters, but friends. Where a cry for help would always be answered. Where no one was alone. On the anniversary of the first rescue, a ceremony was held every year. Representatives from every species gathered to remember the moment when everything changed. They told the story of the gentle dawn, They honored Admiral Dohwan and his brave crew. They renewed their promise to help each other. Ambassador Yunji, very old now, gave the final speech at the 50th anniversary. She stood with difficulty, supported by friends from a dozen worlds. Her voice was weak but clear. 50 years ago, a ship called for help, she said. We answered. We did not know what would happen. We only knew that someone needed us. That was enough. That will always be enough. She smiled at the crowd. We are human. We help. And now, so do all of you. A new distress signal lit up the screens at that exact moment. A ship in trouble somewhere on the frontier. The assembled leaders looked at each other. Then they smiled. Within minutes, ships from a dozen species launched toward the signal. Humans and aliens working together. Flying together. Racing to help strangers they had never met. Because someone called for help, and they answered. They always would.